Hi, I'm Jim Hoft, the founder and owner of the Gateway Pundit. And today I am in Vienna, Austria, and I'm very excited to speak with Bernadette Conrads. She's an expert in USAID, and she's been researching the topic for several years. And she's agreed to sit and speak with me. I met Bernadette last night at this wonderful ball they have in town that was a excellent time. I didn't even realize going into it that it was actually a conservative ball until somebody told me that these are conservative people in there. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. I had never been to such an event, and it was elegant. It was beautiful. It was, sophisticated, and it was just one of the most unique experiences I've had. But you could only do that in Vienna. And so anyway, Bernadette, I'm so glad you were able to join me tonight in this short notice.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm glad we met yesterday by coincidence nearly, because I'm a great fan of the Gateway Pundit, so I'm very, very proud that you invited me.
Oh, that's great. Now, Bernadette works for a friend of mine, Petr Bystron. He's a member of the European Union, and Bernadette is an assistant, and she also is head of communications with Petr. She's worked with him for a little bit of time now, and Bernadette also, as I had said, she's an expert in USAID. I wanted to go over a little bit of a timeline because most Americans probably had never heard of this group, USAID. And it wasn't until President Trump all of a sudden focused on this group and then he defunded it. And I wanted to just mention a couple of these dates that were important. On January 24th, right after his inauguration, Trump froze all foreign spending. And then on February 3rd, Trump appointed Elon Musk, who was head of Doge at the time, and he shut down USAID completely. So this was about 2 weeks later. Elon Musk said that it was a organization beyond repair, and that's why he shut down this organization. Musk was appointed to head the Doge group on November 12, 2024, right after Trump was elected. On February 25th of 25, this is what's been interesting in the past few weeks. Then we have this rogue judge named Amir Ali who decided that Trump needed to pay these foreign, this financial aid to groups of $2 billion after Trump had already shut it down. So we're having this issue in the U.S. right now. Who runs the country, these district judges or the president who everyone voted for? It seems like it would be an easy answer, but it's not. It's going all the way to the Supreme Court. And then just a couple of days ago on March 5th, the Supreme Court denied the Trump administration's request to overturn Ali's order not to pay these $2 billion to foreign aid. So it's a very confusing topic for a lot of Americans. I think a lot of Americans are very also confused because we always thought we had a president, who was calling the shots in the country, and now we have these rogue judges who only seem to appear when Trump's in office. Here's a little bit of a fact: Trump, his first time in office, had more of these judicial responses to his actions than all of the other presidents combined up to that time. So they're doing this, to stall his administration, to take down his administration, and to call the shots. It's a very unusual thing that's happened in the United States. It should be a simple thing to decide, but the Supreme Court still they'll look at this again in the future. But anyway, so that's where all this foreign aid is right now in the United States. But you were looking at this prior to President Trump being elected. You've been looking at this for how long now?
Absolutely. I think I'm interested into this topic since about 5 years. Not specifically into USAID. Yeah, I'm not an expert in USAID, but on these structures, there are many money pots like USAID. There's also the National Endowment for Democracy. There are plenty of these organizations who work with the CIA and who are deep state organizations which are active in the whole world. They create regime changes, they control our media, and those organizations used as a cover for these operations are called NGOs. They call them NGOs, non-governmental organizations, although they are funded by you, the US taxpayers. So that's a very crazy thing. And I followed these structures in the last few years many times, because I was always confronted with it. I was confronted with censorship on the media, which didn't take place by our governments, who also try to do this, but which strongly takes place by organizations like these, who are funded by USAID.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that. In fact, Gateway Pundit was a victim of this. We had an organization, USAID gave money to this organization in the United Kingdom. It was the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And this group then went to Google and said, you need to shut down the ads on Gateway Pundit. So this is a British group, a censorship group, that worked to get our ads in the United States taken off of our site. And they were using US taxpayer dollars from USAID to do that. They were successful. And we found out about it, not because we read about it, but because the founder of the Center for Countering Digital Hate went in front of the parliament there and bragged that he had removed ads from Gateway Pundit. So he mentions us by name in front of the British Parliament. And that doesn't happen every day when you hear a U.S. Website getting attacked by someone in the U.K. And after some research and more information came to light, we find out that it's the USAID that was funding his organization. So, and they were doing this, I think, across Europe. They were shutting down voices, and I don't know if they still are or not. But it's shocking that that's where that money was going to.
Absolutely true. That's the thing. You see, we are all confronted with USAID, or were confronted with it in the last few years. And I always try to find out where do these attacks come from. I did a deep dive, and names that showed up in the end where, my research stopped. It was always like National Endowment for Democracy or USAID. It always ends there. Mm-hmm. You go through organization, and then in the end, there is USAID or the NED, and it's the taxpayers' money going into all these operations.
Right.
And we had a similar situation. I founded Der Status. It's a German-speaking Austrian alternative news project. I founded it with two colleagues from another newspaper, and we had these attacks also. It was like fact-checking exploded. These fact-checkers coming up with COVID. There were all these organizations from the US who told us what was right and what was wrong, and it's just censorship. They call it fact-checking, but it's censorship. Like those information we gave, later scientists proved it was right what we said, but fact-checkers said, no, that's not true, there's no proof, it's not right, So they're always using these Orwellian strategies to call, censorship becomes fact checking, dictatorship becomes democracy, slavery becomes freedom, and so on. That's what they always do, and it's the same with USAID. Foreign aid. No, it's not about aid. It's about control. It's about control and oppression, and it's also about regime-changing strategies, and it's about election fraud also. But I think we're going to talk about this topic later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. We had the same problem in the United States where they were fact checking us, and we had people from overseas fact checking our articles. People from China were fact checking Gateway Pundit, and it was the same thing as probably the same issues that you were pointing out, that the virus was made in a lab. We had we had photos from the inside the Wuhan lab before anyone. And we had some great sources from inside China who were sending us things, and they would fact check us and say, no, that's incorrect. Well, then 2-3 years later, we find out, actually, that was 100% true. Fauci even admits it, and we have the emails now. But this is what they do to shut us down. And that's tragic that they were doing the same thing in Europe, and that's with US dollars. So was it just like Facebook that was doing this to you? Or in the US, the social media giants got involved, and then they were censoring conservative, mostly independent media. But is that where you were censored by, or was it other groups?
No, absolutely not. There we come to the OCCRP network. It's called Organized Corruption and Crime Reporting, blah, blah, blah. It's like very nice guys, and they have their partnerships, and they control like most huge media organizations in Europe. And it's funded by USAID, as WikiLeaks showed now. Yeah. WikiLeaks showed that this was funded by USAID, and this OCCRP network put down with, they had their own fact checkers, and they transported it to this legacy media, which websites were trustful and which are not, and it doesn't end there. It's not just about trust, you have with your readers or viewers if you do video. It's also about being published, on social media platforms, but also as we had the situation at the European Parliament. We were in the situation that we were censored by a technical organization called Blue Coat. Blue Coat is a US program. The European Union uses it, obviously, and it banned our website in European institutions. And some politicians and their staff called me and told me back then, when I was not at the European Union, that our website was banned. And I investigated this case, and I was like, okay, how did that work out? And I knew why. We a few months before we were blocked there, we got questioned via email by a company called NewsGuard. NewsGuard is also such an NGO, which is funded governmentally. It is a US company, and it's also funded by the European Union, as MEP Virginie Choron showed before. She's a French MEP, and she's also interested in these cases. And So they were successful. They organized that we were blocked because they said we would spread disinformation. And I let people check afterwards. I asked them to check if you could watch porn at the European Parliament as an experiment. You could watch hardcore porn, but you could not read their status there, you know,
Wow.
because that's too dangerous for stuff to do any research there. Because they said, yeah, it was not, it was disinformation we spread about COVID. So
That company obviously has hit a lot of media outlets in the United States, NewsGuard, and but it only targets one side of the aisle, you know, and it only targets, you know, if you're conservative or independent media, they'll challenge everything you do, and it doesn't matter what the media, the mainstream says, you know, and they in the United States have produced lie after lie for about 8 years. It just keeps, you know, stacking up all their lies, and yet they never get like a flag from NewsGuard. It's just the smaller independent media and that's their target. And we found too that it was the U.S. United States Defense Department that was funding NewsGuard, that was giving some money to NewsGuard. So, yeah, it's just a horrible organization that was created just to censor and silence and blacklist independent media.
it's a CIA organization, their advisory board. When I saw this, I was shocked. I wasn't fair. Do you know about Mike Hayden?
Oh yeah, Michael Hayden. I think I had a lawsuit against him one time because he smeared us on the public television.
You should watch out. You should really watch out about, Mike Hayden is one of the chief advisors at NewsGuard. He's the former
CIA
NSA
chief.
CIA chief, NSA chief, and also, let me check, sorry. Yeah, NSA, CIA, and I think he also did something at the NATO, but I'm not sure about it. Now, I have to check. But you know his famous quote, "We kill people with data." We kill people with data. And I was like, yeah, okay, you kill people with data. Yeah, it's true somehow when it comes to censorship. I mean, it's quite harsh, but I checked his presentation at Johns Hopkins University in 2014, where he said that, because I've flicked through media articles and then I watched it on YouTube, and it was like he explained how they really, really kill people with data. He told it as an CIA chief or something like that. He was very proud because they kill people with data via drones, because they find they use your cell data and then they kill people via drones abroad, you know. I mean, we talk about Iraq or something, not about Europe in this case, but you know, it's very scary. And people like this who say we kill people with data are the chief advisors of these censorship organizations. I mean, it's absolutely scary.
Yeah, I don't think that's his only one that he's involved in either. And there's several high-profile U.S. government officials who are now part of the censorship game. So it's really shocking. They had one that was created called Hamilton 68. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. And it was some of the same players. They seem to get involved in a lot of these different organizations. And it was they were deciding if this was Russian disinformation. So basically everything we wrote was classified as Russian disinformation, even if it had nothing to do with Russia. We have no contacts with Russia. I don't know. I don't even know if I know people from Russia, right? And anyway, but we were the top, one of the top 2 or 3 that they had listed every day as Russia disinformation. So it's a lot of the same players that bounce around and are involved in this. But NewsGuard has been very effective, I think, and because what they do then is they sell their work to like Microsoft or something, and then people could put it on their computers, and if they go to a site like Gateway Pundit and the little red button pops up, you can't trust this site. That's what they want. They want people to not, they want to be able to control what you're going to see. And so I'm sure it's affected us tremendously over the years, but horrible organization.
Yeah, and it's absolutely dangerous. And if you see this connection, for example, at the European Parliament with Blue Code and NewsGuard, Blue Code is used in authoritarian regimes like in Iran to censor the internet. That's what Blue Code is used for. That's why it's criticized in the West usually. But in this case, it's like all right to use it at the European Parliament. I think that's absolutely scandalous. And this whole Russian disinformation thing, yeah, we also had that. They were like, the legacy media, mainstream media were like, yeah, we were funded by Russians. I was like, oh, great, we get so many rubles or something. I will check our bank account. I mean, okay, great. Putin is paying us for our journalism. I didn't find anything. There was no money from Russia, no money from Kazakhstan or anything. Where's the money,
Right.
But I would read it on the news. But yeah, then you could be sad because you don't get any money. And it's just like, okay, and wait, when did we say anything about Russia,
Yeah.
I mean, what do we have to do with that? And where's the proof? Where's the proof for all these allegations all the time? And it's so weird. They never have proof, but we have a whole lot of proof of this hybrid warfare the US deep state organizes against Europe and against the whole world. And they're proud of it. They put it on their news websites. They're like, oh, we are in a cooperation with OCCRP. It's so great. Yeah, they're very proud. Oh, we're funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. We're funded by USAID. They carry it around as if it was like medals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so crazy. And I'm so glad that this seems to take an end now. Because, I was very critical about Trump taking over the US. And, all people around me, they were like very positive. And they said, oh, everything's going to change and it's going to be so all right and awesome. And I was like, yeah, okay, in geopolitical perspectives, we have different interests. And I cannot imagine, that's what I was like in November, I cannot imagine that even Donald Trump, I mean, I like him too, yeah, but I cannot imagine that he would shut down the National Endowment for Democracy, for example. And I always told my friends and colleagues, as long as they don't do that, they don't have my heart, yeah.
Right.
And then it's like in the first month, they take over and they're like, okay, we defund USAID, we defund the National Endowment for Democracy. I cannot believe it. It's so crazy. And now I really become a
big Trump fan.
A Trump groupie too. You got me with that.
Yeah, I think that was just shocking for most people when he did that, because we weren't looking in that direction at all, and yet he did that. And you see, the left, of course, especially, was they were just outraged that this could happen, and they still are, and they're still, like I said, we have this one district judge who believes that Trump should have to pay this $2 billion of foreign aid. I mean, one judge is making our country pay $2 billion to other countries. I don't know how that's possible, but that's what's happening, and people are very frustrated about it. I know I am, but yeah, I don't know why Trump focused on that right away, but it seemed to be very effective.
The reason is that WikiLeaks exposed this whole structures in January, I think, and they forced it. And Elon Musk saw it, and he grabbed it, and he said, "Yeah, that's like a Dodge topic. That's a real huge Dodge topic." And Trump has his experiences with this deep state, and he really wants to fight it now. And I think he suffered from this deep state in his first period also. So I think that's why he's very focused to understand what's going on, what are the reasons for the situation to become as we had it, you know. And now what's going on is a revolution. In my opinion, it's a revolution in the US of common sense and of truth and freedom and honesty. And that's so amazing. And I hope that we are going to get this situation in Europe also, you know. But here, it's very dangerous now because our leaders, they freak out, you know, as they lose all these control from the US. They're like chicken without hats or something, you know. They don't know what to do and they freak out and they try to pervert all the instructions they got before from organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy and so on. And I think that's a very dangerous situation. And as Trump fights for peace now in Ukraine, they're like, okay, no, we have to fight Russia, you know. So that's a very scary situation. But I think we can work on that in Europe, and that's what Petr Bystron does, you know. That's the idea, and I think that's very great that we have politicians who communicate with politicians in the US at conferences like the CPAC, and who try to learn from them, and who fight this USAID situation here. Because, you know, on your side, the interesting point is like the waste of the taxpayers' money in the US. But we have a different topic. We need to investigate what happened in the last few years or the last decades with your money in our countries, about regime changings, about the control of our media, and how our elections in the European Union were stolen. I think stolen by disinformation and by this hybrid warfare.
Well, they've been very effective in the EU, I think, just as much as in the US, as far as the fact that it seems like in the EU you don't have any voice at all if you're a conservative. They want to continually shut the voices down of conservatism or independent media across the continent. And that, of course, is the USAID. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out. Have you noticed any changes now? I mean, it's only been a couple months, so maybe not.
Yeah, the thing is, they cry for the European Union to finance this USAID structures now. So everything should go on. That's what they want.
Yeah, but that's how they control the people, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about the National Endowment for Democracy. The European Union also founded the European Endowment for Democracy. So they copied these structures, and it's kind of senseless because, you know, I mean, the main idea of this whole structure, of this situation, is to control foreign countries by the US. Why would you fund that if you're not the US? I mean, that's even stranger, you know, than wasting US tax money for this control abroad.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. All right, so, you know, we've been talking about a few of these groups, the National Endowment of Democracy and USAID. They have such, you know, innocent names. Of course, everybody supports aid for, you know, people who are suffering, and the National endowment of democracy. Everybody wants to spread democracy. Is that what? So why would you be against? Why would people be against these groups if that's what they're supposed to be doing? Why would people be against these innocent sounding groups?
Yeah, because they are not as innocent as they sound. You know, that's what I mean with the Orwellian change of meanings to its absolute contrarian meaning. You know, like I think they try to control foreign countries, and that's what they call democracy. So it's the complete opposite of it. And the investigative journalist Hernando Calvo Ospina wrote about the National Endowment for Democracy in Le Monde Diplomatique in August 2007 already, about the problems the US created in Latin America. So he is really an expert on the National Endowment for Democracy, and I read a lot about this topic on him, and he fled his Latin American home and went to Europe because he didn't feel safe anymore. You know, it's very dangerous to work on these topics, and he uncovered that the first president of the National Endowment for Democracy, it was the historian Alan Weinstein, that he confessed to the Washington Post, a lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. And yeah, I mean, why isn't it like nice work? I mean, the CIA, maybe it's just worried, you know, and it wants to care about everyone. But that's not the view this organization has on itself, you know, and that's what I found out via a Breitbart News article. I try to quote it. Yeah. In 2023, the Global Disinformation Index was demonetized by the National Endowment for Democracy. The Global Disinformation Index works, as it says, globally, and it's an organization by George Soros Open Society Foundations. So they organize, they control what is information and what is disinformation. And why did they get defunded from the National Endowment for Democracy, from the US taxpayers' money? Because they worked domestically. They attacked media like Breitbart News, maybe also the Gateway Pundit, I'm not sure, but they attacked domestically, and that's not allowed. Why are they not allowed to spread this great democracy domestically? Because it's hybrid warfare, what they do. Because it's a weapon. Because it's not about democracy. Because it's not a friendly act. And I think that's the proof that they don't see themselves as the good guys either, you know? I think you cannot say that it's a conspiracy theory anymore, that these regime changes, which are also proved in many parts of the world, all the color revolutions, you know, which were organized by the thesis of Gene Sharp, a US political scientist. We have a lot of proof that they were organized by the US, for example, in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe and in the Arab Spring and so on. That's the way the US works. That's the way US geopolitics worked in the last decades. And it's very interesting that this is about to change now.
Absolutely. And I think it's shocking, too, that it was meant to be based, outside of the U.S., but then they started bringing it and using those same tactics back at home. You know, Norm Eisen, you've heard of his name. He's very prominent in politics right now and has been for several years. He hates Trump, you know, he just wakes up in the morning screaming Trump's name because he hates him so much. But he admitted in a Time magazine article, basically, after the election in 2020, that they were using sort of a color revolution in 2020 to make sure Trump didn't return to office. So that's something that really shocked a lot of people, that they would brag about it openly in a prominent magazine about what they were doing behind the scenes, you know? And it sounds like it's the same type of actions they've been taking, you know, in other countries.
Yeah, it's interesting that they finally started to do the same in the US. I think they freaked out because before, you know, it was a very Latin American thing, yeah, that the US controlled countries there and fought against, you know, communist countries by these strategies and tactics where they established them, I think. And you know, they also did it in Europe, and they just did it in 2024. And that's very interesting, I think, because if we come back to the case of Petr Bystron, he was attacked like 3 weeks before the European elections. All these mainstream media companies who work with the OCCRP network, which is funded by USAID, they came up with this whole made-up story about the Voice of Europe scandal. What is Voice of Europe? Voice of Europe is a media organization which was founded in the Czech Republic, and its journalists are exile Ukrainian journalists who cannot speak up in their home country anymore, and who try to fight the dictatorship in Ukraine. And they cannot do it in their own country, of course, because, you know, when Zelensky took over with help of the US, he banned like several oppositional parties. He banned TV stations, he banned media. So there's no freedom of speech anymore in Ukraine. And Ukrainians try to speak out in foreign countries. And that's what Voice of Europe was. And this newspaper was absolutely destroyed by these allegations. I think it doesn't exist anymore. They were like, they always said that it was financed by the Russians, but I think there's not even a proof about that. But in the next step, before the European elections, they came up with, the leaders of the Alternative für Deutschland, the patriotic oppositional party from Germany, which was very strong and in all polls before. In the polls, they were very strong, so they thought they had to take action, and they came up with this scandal. And the scandal is that the first politicians on the list for this election were Maximilian Grah and Petr Bystron, and they got interviewed before by this newspaper. And then they came up with, they are financed by the Russians because they took interviews at Voice of Europe. Like, where's the proof? And they always said, there was proof and we're going to bring it up, you know, and we talked to the Secret Service, but they never had any evidence. And after the elections, you didn't hear anything about that. But the whole election was always about Russian interference by the AfD, everything is about Russian interference, and people were like, okay, I cannot vote the AfD because it's not, as they say, a party for Germany, it's a party for Russia. That's like the framing they offered, and many people got scared and believed that because it was like a Süddeutsche, Spiegel, which are very established newspapers, and they are part of the OCCRP network. And it's so interesting that these media came up all together at the same time with this story, and other media didn't really cover it. And after the elections, they didn't do anything about it. So it was just like a show. It was a show, but it changed the situation for the elections a lot, yeah. And in fact, it's exactly what they did themselves, is what their allegations were about with this Russian thing. So it's very crazy, isn't it?
They do that in America too. It seems like every time they're pointing the finger at you, it's about something that they've already done. I thought the Voice of America or Voice of Europe was paid. Wasn't that funded by the United States government? Isn't it? I think I've been to the headquarters there in Prague.
You've been there.
The old headquarters. The old headquarters used to be in the former communist parliamentary building. I think they moved out to a different location now. They're still operating, obviously, but yeah, that's really interesting. And Petr told me, I spoke with Petr. He told me a little bit about it, but he said they put up hundreds of articles about this, and none of it was true. And I think he has a lawsuit, possibly. I'm not sure. How did he end up doing in the election?
The election ended out well for the AfD, but I think the result would have been better, you know. And we're never going to know, but now we know that the election really was interfered by USAID. Because USAID financed all that. And I think it's important to investigate that in the European Union. And that's what Petr Bystron is doing now. He tabled a motion for a resolution for a deep investigation in all structures, from USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy and the Open Society Foundations, an investigation on how they influence the media in Europe, which companies were funded by them, which elections were manipulated by their work, by their regime-changing strategies also. And besides the investigation, he wants to ban all those NGOs who are not NGOs because they are governmental funded in the European Union, who are just used as weapons against our democracy.
Truly. Can you explain why is Soros groups involved in all this? What's the connection there? How are they brought into this, right? It seems like they're getting the funding from the U.S. government too somehow.
Yeah.
How does that happen over here?
The Soros organizations benefit from these National Endowment for Democracy fundings. That's proved. I'm not sure about USAID, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were also funded by USAID. I didn't find the proof yet. Maybe I'm going to do it in the next few days. But Soros is not like the rich philanthropist who does it just for fun, what he does. He works for the government, in my opinion, for the deep state government of the US. That's why he does that. He's just a regime-changing operationist, and he uses this National Endowment for Democracy money to organize these regime changes. And what was interesting, he also organized like the travel of refugees in the refugee crisis in 2015. It was his organizations who were in Africa hiring people to go to Europe, you know, helping them with plans. And he also educates people in African prisons with his organizations. And yeah, he's a very important factor in political sciences also, as he has his own universities and his own science, sort of, because, you know, nearly every democracy index you have in political science is somehow founded by a Soros organization. So he defines with his organization in the interest of this deep state, US deep state, what is a democracy and what is not.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's shocking. The fact that George Soros is so involved makes you wonder, are these people, you know, is this something good that they're promoting? It certainly doesn't seem like it, does it?
I don't think so. I mean, it depends, you know, on the point of view. If you're like profit, if you have profit from this US deep state, so maybe it's a great thing. Or if you're George or Alex Soros, it's a great thing for sure. If you are part of a company which gets a lot of money for that, yeah, then it's a great thing. But for most people in the world, I think it's a horrible thing. And it's oppressive, and there's no interest for citizens to support organizations like that. I think we should fight that, and I think it's very important to know about these organizations and to know what they do.
Absolutely. So, what are your next steps? What are you working on? What do you plan on digging into next?
You know, as Mr. Bystron's assistant now since February, I try to dig deeper into these structures, and you know, we tabled the motion in a resolution, and next we try to spread the investigation in the European Union and in Germany, and I'm going to to focus my research on that, what we need to do, what Petr needs to do to have these investigations. And we are organizing our partnerships in these investigations. We also need partnerships in Germany at the Bundestag to investigate what's going on. How did those organizations manipulate elections in Europe and in Germany?
And I suspect there's going to be a lot of information there once you start looking into that area.
Absolutely, absolutely. But in the end, you know, you will need an inquiry commission. And Petr works on organizing something like that, an inquiry commission, because you know, you can do a deep dive into these topics, but in the end there is so much information you cannot find out if you don't have like the support of official institutions, and that's why Petr is working on having it on a parliamentary basis, you know, this investigation, because you need help for that. And there is the right to do inquiry commissions. So that will be the next step, and that's where you would get more information, you know.
Terrific. Do you have any closing thoughts on this whole topic?
Yeah, I hope that Europe learns from Trump, as mentioned, and from Musk and from Dodge, And I hope that we get over these whole von der Leyen's policies. I hope that we get back to real freedom and real democracy.
That sounds good. I think we'd all like that. Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Bernadette. It was great.
Thank you.
Wonderful information. Good luck in your research. Please keep us posted.
Thank you.
All right.